everybody, and welcome to my channel. If this is your first time on my channel, I would like to invite you to check out my other videos. I have produced a lot of videos, and on this channel we talk about we expose the truth about dogs and their owners. Dogs and cats, although we do talk about dogs primarily, and we don't do this because we're hateful people. People think that because I hate dogs, I must be a hateful person, but I'm not a hateful person. I love many, 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 many different things. We are doing this because we are caring people. We care a lot, and we want to save the lives of humans, wild animals, domestic animals. We also care about the environment a lot. So we're trying to shine light on this massive problem, which is dog ownership and cat ownership. When people find out about this channel, or they come to my channel, they watch a video, they'll comment, "Why don't you like dogs? What have dogs ever done to you?" Or I'll get comments like, "Oh, you must have been bitten by a dog." And whenever people say things like this, they say it with a tone of disdain and contempt, or they're mocking me. That alone tells me that these dog people are not well mentally. Imagine if someone created a YouTube channel to raise awareness about drunk driving, let's say. Now imagine a person leaving a comment and writing, "Oh, you must have been hit by a drunk driver." No, like, what? And let's say I had been bitten by a dog when I was a child. I wasn't. I've never been bitten, but let's say I was. Where's your empathy? Maybe I had somebody close to me who was bitten or disfigured or even killed by a dog. This happens regularly to people. Where's their empathy? They are lacking in empathy. And you don't need to have something bad happen to you in order for you to recognize that it is a problem. I don't have to have had cancer to have empathy for those who do have cancer. Anyways, I did not always have this awareness. I was not always a dog hater. So what happened? I'm going to bring you back to the beginning, and I'm going to explain this journey to you. Now, I'm going to have a lot to say, so this is going to be a long video. So starting at the beginning, my mother liked to take me blueberry picking with her. She was always gardening. I was surrounded by flowers and plants growing up. I loved to play in her garden. My dad, he loved to bird watch with me. He would take me into the forest on hikes, and we would watch nature documentaries together. And I always connected very much with the land, the forests, the lakes, even the atmosphere, like weather. My dad was a meteorologist, so he, well, among other things, air traffic controller, and so he knew a lot about weather and was always teaching me about the clouds and stuff, and I loved all that. And I really thought I loved animals. And I thought they were fascinating. They filled me with wonder and delight when I would see them in their natural habitat. But this was really sick because at the same time, we were fishing and we were hunting. I don't have any pictures of me with my guns, but I had guns. I used to shoot animals. I shot rabbits and partridge. And, what I really loved to do was not to torture and to kill the fish. I just loved to be near them, to see them up close. I thought that the iridescence of their scales was out of this world, and they were just so different and fascinating. And I loved to be close to them. But I actually didn't love them, because if I loved them, I wouldn't be torturing them for fun. I wouldn't be killing them. There were a lot of other things I could have eaten, but I chose to do this. And, that's not love. I was not an animal lover, even though I thought I was. But I wanted to be close to animals. I wanted to have contact with animals. I couldn't have contact by watching nature documentaries or bird watching. I wanted to touch the animals and hold them. And what better way to do that than to own them? So I owned pets. I owned a lot of pets. I was always asking my mom for pets. I used to capture wildlife like salamanders and frogs, and I would bring them home and put them into boxes or jars, very unsuitable environments. These animals would suffer. And I remember once one of my frogs that I found at the lake jumped out of my hands in our living room, and it went under the couch and we couldn't find it. We found it like 3 months later, dried to a crisp underneath the radiator. But in my mind, I was an animal lover. That's insane. I owned guinea pigs. I had hamsters. I had mice and rats. Now, I can't find pictures of all the pets I had because this was back in the 80s. We didn't have cell phones. If you wanted to take pictures, you would have to load your camera up with film and then bring the film away to like a drugstore or something, and then they would develop the film and you'd have to pay for your pictures. It was a pain in the ass, so I didn't take pictures of all my pets. But I had 2 lizards that I absolutely loved. I mean, I thought I loved them, but did I really? I was keeping them trapped in a glass box. I had turtles. Here's a picture of me getting an aquarium on my birthday. And I had all sorts of fish in this aquarium. For a while, I owned a piranha. And it used to be like an event. Like once a week, my friends would come over and watch me feed a live goldfish to my piranha. And sitting there watching a piranha rip a goldfish apart was entertaining. I had a bunny. Here's my bunny. I had birds. Here's our budgie, Elvis. Elvis used to talk a lot. He was really cool. He actually used to say, "Elvis bird, the happy bird." And sometimes he would just say, "Elvis bird, the happy." And he was delightful to have around, and it just, really cool. I thought today my thoughts about pets have changed completely because I realize if you love an animal, you won't imprison it. Keeping animals in glass boxes or in cages is cruel. Because I identified at a young age as an animal lover, I just thought that dogs were part of nature. They were animals like other animals, only they were more easily accessible. You could touch them, you could pet them, and that was so cool. It was like having a piece of nature close to you. And I remember looking at books of dogs and dreaming about having a dog one day. I grew up among dogs. My relatives had dogs. Here's a picture of my aunt and uncle's dog. It was a Maltese. They would come and visit us a few times a year and bring this dog. All of my cousins had dogs. We'd go visit relatives. There were always dogs around. After that Maltese died, they got a mini schnauzer, this thing. And other relatives had dogs. My parents split up when I was 8, and my dad, he moved around, and he had jobs that took him up north, and I would sometimes go visit him at his work. And he was staying in like trailers with different guys, and they, these guys had dogs. This was my dad's dog for a while. And so I remember looking at this book of dogs and just marveling at the different breeds of dogs and the different shapes and the different coats and the colors and the muzzle shapes, and it was amazing to me. I remember just being in awe of these dogs, and I'm trying to remember that feeling. I remember being like intrigued by these dogs with those long muzzles like borzois. I always thought borzois looked majestic. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I did, and I wanted a borzoi, but we couldn't find any borzois around where I lived. But when I was about 11 years old, my dad brought me to this place where they had these collie puppies. I was told they were purebred, but looking at the dog, I don't think it was purebred. It was too stocky, and its muzzle was a bit too short and wide to be a purebred. But I saw its mother, and its mother looked like a purebred collie. But it didn't once it got older. Anyway, here's a picture of it when it was a puppy. The other dog belonged to my dad's roommate. See, I was surrounded by dogs growing up. I never had any bad experience with dogs as a child. All of my experiences with dogs when I was a child were positive. Anyway, we got this puppy when I was about 11. And I was so thrilled and over the moon to have this dog. I used to call this dog my best friend. I remember taking it into the forest with me and watching it run free off its leash, and somehow that filled me with joy. It was as if watching the dog run free in nature was just this complete experience of nature or something, because I was able to touch the dog and pet the dog, and the dog listened to me, and I just felt this connection to nature, I thought. Today, I know better. I know that dogs have contributed to the extinction of over a dozen animal species, and that dogs threaten over 200 more animal species. A viewer of mine called Organic Tofu left a comment a while ago and wrote, "Dog people think dogs are nature when they couldn't be further from the truth. Unlike wild animals, dogs did not evolve through a process of natural selection. They are not natural. They are man-made. They are a non-native, invasive pest animal that is very damaging to nature." But I didn't know this at the time. I would see a cute animal and I would want to possess it. Oh, I want one. You hear people say this all the time. Animals are not ours to own. They exist for their own reasons. But at the time, I thought animals were here for us. Anyway, I also would bring home a lot of stray cats. My sister and I, we used to go out and find these cats in the neighborhood and bring them home and beg my mom to give us cat food to feed them, and we'd want to keep them. My mother, she didn't like cats. She did not want animals in her house. She thought they were dirty and disgusting, and she believed they belonged outdoors. My sister used to laugh at her, and to this day will say that my mom was a germaphobe. I don't think my mom was a germaphobe. I just think that she saw dogs and cats for what they are. And anyway, she, on the one hand, didn't like animals in her house, but at the same time, she used to talk a lot about her father's dog. My grandfather had this Labrador retriever that I never met because it died before I was born, but it became somewhat legendary in our family, and apparently this dog was a great hunting dog because my grandfather loved to hunt, and this dog was a very, very good hunting companion and would retrieve the geese and ducks that he would shoot. And so she saw dogs in a positive light on the one hand, but on the other hand, they were dirty. So when we got our dog, this collie, it was going to be an outdoor dog. She made that very clear. So we built it a doghouse. Here is a picture of me in the doghouse. You can see the spots of urine in the snow. This dog would urinate and poop all around its doghouse, but that didn't stop me from playing around it and climbing into it. Absolutely disgusting, and I would never do this today, but at the time I saw no problem with this. As I look at this picture, I'm reminded of how my dog would sexually assault my friends. In particular, this guy called Louis, who lived a few houses away from us. I remember him coming over and we'd just like play together or whatever, hang out, and this dog was humping him, and I was just laughing, just like all those videos I've shown you and the people I talk about on my channel. I was one of them. I was just standing there laughing like this was funny as my dog sexually assaulted him. This happened right next to this doghouse. Anyway, now where I grew up, winters get very cold. I'm talking about -30, -40 degrees Celsius. So my mother, she would allow us to bring the dog inside during the winter, but only on exceptionally cold nights. It was predominantly an outdoor dog. We would let it bark. I think back to those days and I realized that we were extremely ignorant. I was only 11, 12, 13, but I think my mom should have known better, but she didn't. We were the type of family that I complain about today in my videos. Very ignorant, would let our dog bark. This was so crazy because in the winter we would get these snowstorms, and sometimes at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, these snowplows would go down the street clearing the snow, and the dog would bark, and it would wake me up because it was right under my bedroom window. But we didn't bring the dog in. We let it stay outside and bark, and I'm sure this dog woke up all the neighbors. But somehow, and this is really interesting, it's like fascinating to me, the thought did not cross our minds that maybe this was going to disturb anyone in the neighborhood. Didn't cross our minds. Now, we had this one guy who lived across the lane from us, a few houses away. His name was Joel. Joel, if you're listening to this by any chance, I am so sorry for what we did to you, because this man let us know that he was not happy about our dog barking. I would be in the backyard and this man would walk past our house and my dog that would be chained up. Back then, it was no big deal to leave your dog chained up in the yard. My dog would lunge at him, run to him, bark aggressively, ferociously, choking itself on its chain, trying to get to this man, barking furiously. Do you think I even had the thought of making this dog stop? I mean, it didn't cross my mind that this was unacceptable. I look back, I can't believe this, but it's true. And I remember many times, this guy, Joel, as he would walk by the house and be barked at by our dog, he would bark back at the dog. And I remember thinking, what a mean guy. What a miserable guy. Unbelievable. Today, I totally sympathize with this man. He was probably pissed off because this dog was waking him up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And we were ignoramuses for allowing this to go on. We were ignoramuses for allowing this dog to harass and threaten this man who was just walking by minding his own business. But we saw nothing wrong with it. Isn't that weird? I remember walking with my dog off leash, and sometimes it would listen to me, sometimes it wouldn't. Sometimes it would just bolt after a cat or something. It never really got into any fights with any dogs that I can remember, but, it was a risk letting this dog off leash. I didn't see it that way. I just remember thinking, oh, how nice, look at it running off its leash. Oh, it looks so free and happy. Oh, and that would give me some warm, fuzzy feelings, I was very selfish. I was only thinking about myself. I remember walking with this dog on the sidewalk, and it would, take a huge dump right in the middle of the sidewalk. And I never once in my life picked up dog shit. No one ever told me that I had to do this, so I didn't. And I think if I had been told to pick it up, I wouldn't have. There's no way I was going to pick up crap with only a plastic bag separating me from the crap. Forget about it, touching this warm pile of shit. There was no way I was going to do that. But anyway, the dog would leave this massive crap on the sidewalk or on someone's lawn or something, and I just remember looking around and thinking, oh, I hope no one sees that, hee oh, and run away, it's crazy. No respect for the neighbors. I remember this dog peeing on car tires, on garages. I didn't care. There was nothing wrong with this in my mind. So when I left home at 17, I eventually got some cats in my own apartment. I had 2 cats. I was living in a very rough part of town. I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have money for an air conditioner. There were no screens on the windows. And this was in Montreal, where summers get very hot. I was baking inside of my apartment, so I would crack my window open just enough, but not too much, because I didn't want my cat to squeeze through it. I was up on the 3rd floor. Here you can see a picture of my boyfriend getting out of his car. I was up on the 3rd floor, so it's quite a ways up. What happened was one night I came home after an AA meeting, and I remember that. And my cat, I only had 1 cat in my apartment. One of them, this one, who liked to hang out on that ledge there, managed to squeeze through a crack. I had no clue that this cat would have been able to squeeze through that small of an opening, but it did. and it fell off the ledge. And I went out looking for it. My friends came over. We tried to find it. We couldn't. I lost that cat, and I'm sure it got injured. I mean, that was quite a fall. And I remember feeling really bad about that. I remember feeling like, this cat does not want to be cooped up in this apartment. It's not fair to keep my cat cooped up in the apartment. And but I knew that letting it roam wasn't safe either. When I was very young, I saw a cat get run over by a car right in front of our house, and that was traumatic. And I knew that cats picked up diseases because this black cat that I had, both cats were given to me by the same person who wanted to get rid of them, and I took them on. This black cat had worms. I talked about this in my video about cats, what I think about cats, and how this black cat had tapeworm segments wriggling out of its anus. And it was lying on my bed. I had tapeworm segments on the bed where I slept. That was acceptable to me at the time. And I knew that they got worms from being outdoors. So that's when I was beginning to see that there's something not right about owning pets. Now, this wasn't an event, how I went from being a pet lover to someone who was anti-pet. It didn't happen overnight. It was a series of events, and I'm going to talk about a few of those events. It all led up to this. It happened over a course of many years. So what happened was then I went to visit my sister who lived in Louisiana. And at that time, I used to smoke cigars, these little cigars called Backwoods Sweets. Oh man, I really enjoyed those at the time. This is a picture of me smoking one of them at the Bourgeois Pig on Franklin Avenue in West Hollywood. I was there visiting my boyfriend at the time who moved to LA. And this is him with his uncle's dogs when we went hiking in the high desert. See, I always had dogs around me. I'm no stranger to dogs. So anyways, I went to visit my sister with my cigar package. I had these cigars in my backpack, I think, or maybe I had taken them out of my backpack. I don't remember, but they were in the closet. I just remember that their cat peed on my cigars. And this really upset me a lot. Of all the places for this cat to piss, it chose to piss on my cigars. And I remember at the time thinking, why do we keep these animals in our homes? They're animals. I decided to move to Holland, and I needed a lift to the airport. I was going to go live with my fiance over there, and I decided I was going to bring my cat with me. I still had that black cat that I used to call my baby. This was my baby. I used to tell people that I hate kids. I was never going to have children. And this cat was my baby. And I had this guy called Marco that I used to work with. He came from Argentina. I talked about Marco in my video about childism. And he really opened my eyes, I think. He said something to me that stuck with me. When he found out I was bringing my cat on the plane with me to Holland, he looked at me with disbelief and he said, "It's just a cat." And I was like, "Dude, it's my baby, blah, blah, blah." And he just shook his head, and the look in his eyes, it was like he really felt sorry for me. And this is the man who told me that if you hate kids, you hate life. And those words stuck with me. And I realized many years later that he was right. I did hate life at that time. I hated myself at the time. I had just gotten sober when I moved to Holland. I was still pretty messed up. I had a lot of work I had to do on myself still. So anyway, I brought this cat to Holland, and I thank Marco. Here we are together at the company Christmas party. He was instrumental in me changing the way I think about pets and children. So I brought this cat to Holland thinking I was doing the right thing, because you don't abandon your children, right? And this was my child. But that cat really, really suffered when we got to Holland. Although we tried to give it a lot of attention, and we did. We were, giving this cat a lot of attention. It was freaked out by the move. I think cats must have some kind of something in their heads, like, when you drop a cat off miles away from its home, it can find its way back, like some sort of ability to sense where it is on the globe. I don't know how that works. But I think this cat was messed up by moving halfway across the world, and it began to lick itself so much that it was developing bald patches on its paws and its tummy. And my husband was very loving with it. He gave it a lot of affection. But the cat would hide a lot, and it was just really stressed out. The vet told us it was stress related. So we decided to get it a companion. We got this little kitten here. And this little kitten did not help my black cat. My black cat continued to lick itself bald. And this little kitten, while it was fun to have for a little while, eventually peed on my husband's side of the bed, right on the mattress, and really pissed him off. And that really upset me as well. And then things changed because I had my first child. And after giving birth to my own biological child, which was an extension of my actual DNA, and seeing the resemblance of my parents and my grandparents and my husband's parents in this child, it was so miraculous and amazing that any love I thought I had for my cat just faded away into the background. Like that was nothing compared to the love I was feeling for my human actual child. And eventually we got rid of our cats. We gave them away to someone who really wanted them, because I discovered what love really was. And, there are people who put their pets on the same level as children. I will never be able to relate to these people. For me, pets and children are not comparable whatsoever. But I needed to have an actual child to realize this. During my pregnancy, I learned about toxoplasmosis. I was getting really grossed out by my cat, walking on the counter after digging in its litter box and so forth. And we were thinking of leaving Holland and moving back to Canada, so that's why we rehomed our cats. We lived in this sort of condo, and in back of our place there was this grassy hill, which would have been really nice to have picnics on or play on, but we never did because it was a dog toilet. Everyone in the neighborhood allowed their dogs to pee and poop there. And once a week, every Friday, the city would come and mow the grass. And the lawnmower would send all this dog shit flying around. And the smell of this dog crap was so bad, we would have to close our windows. It was just terrible. And I remember just being disgusted by that. I remember also being at a family get-together at my in-laws' house, and my brother-in-law showed up with his golden retriever. And this was around the time when my daughter was just learning how to walk. And the dog just ran up to her and knocked her over. And she started to cry, and I was really upset. I didn't show it, but inside I was mad. And that just wasn't cool, I thought. Like, why bring your dog here? So then we moved to BC, Canada, and we were living in this town. We were renting a house, and we had problems with feral cats. We had this crawl space under our house. These cats were congregating, and they were pissing so much under our house that in the summertime our living room smelled like cat piss. And I remember calling the SPCA, and they were coming and setting these live traps and trapping these cats, but they only got a fraction of them. It was such a huge problem, and I remember them being really upset about having to come out and trap these cats, but I was tired of my living room smelling like cat piss, and the cats were starting to bug me at that time. We didn't have any cats or dogs at this time. We did get chinchillas. I thought chinchillas were really cute. I thought they would be fun for our daughter to play with. But eventually, I started to learn about how chinchillas live in the wild. They hop around on the mountains in South America. And I mean, even though we gave these chinchillas a huge cage and took really good care of them, I realized that it was cruel to keep them trapped in a cage. This coincided with me, looking more into veganism. I had been a vegetarian since the age of 18. And by this time I was like 33 or so. And I was looking into veganism because I had a vegan friend who was teaching me about the dairy industry and the egg industry. And I was learning that these industries are actually more cruel than the meat industry and just as damaging to the environment. So I was becoming more aware. Like I shared at the beginning of this video, I love to learn. And so I was learning about this, and my attitude towards animals was starting to change. I was starting to realize that it is wrong to exploit them, not just for meat, but for other reasons as well. I was starting to avoid leather and wool, and learning more about those industries and how cruel they are. So I was starting to feel like, no, it's not right to exploit animals. I don't believe they are here to serve us. I think there are alternatives to all these things, so why not opt for the alternatives and not contribute to this exploitation and cruelty? What's really weird is that we actually moved twice to escape barking dogs. We actually left that town, moved to a new town, and one of the reasons we left was because I was getting really fed up with the neighbor's barking dog. And that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. But I was really upset with that barking dog. It was really starting to piss me off. We were renting a place in our new town, and there was another barking dog across the alley, and it would wake me up. It would keep my kids awake when they were trying to nap. And I was just at this point getting really fed up with barking dogs. And that's when I decided I wanted to move out of town. And my husband was on board, so we purchased a house in the country, thinking that if we had a little bit of land, barking dogs wouldn't be a problem. I was wrong. When we got here, what's really weird is that even though I had been annoyed by barking dogs, I somehow was overcome with this obsession to get a dog. My husband did not want a dog, but I was pestering him to get a dog. I cannot believe this happened, but it did. I was just, we got to get a dog. We got to get a dog. I want a dog. And eventually I got my way. We got a labradoodle because I heard, I did some research, and I wanted a dog that would be gentle and good with children, because by this time we had 2 children, and I heard that they were great with kids. So this dog was very expensive. We found a breeder in our province that sent the dog to us on an airplane. Here it is. The dog cost $2,700, but I cut a deal with the breeder because I did some artwork for her. So we got a huge discount on the dog. Look at the eyes on this thing. So stupid, such a stupid expression. And let me tell you, this dog was dumber than a doorknob. Very affectionate, but stupid. I look back at this part of my life with disbelief and wonder, and I just don't know what the hell was going through my mind. I really think I was under some sort of spell, and that is, we were not a complete family unless we had a dog. I think this was just brainwashing through everything I saw on TV and everywhere. All these ads everywhere. It was like I believed that a family is not complete without a dog, or a house isn't a home without a dog. And we bought this home. I thought, this is where I want to settle down and stay for a long time. And we need a dog to make that like complete somehow, which is absolutely crazy. How does a predatory carnivore in your house make it a home? There's no logic in this at all. But all of our neighbors had dogs, and I thought that we needed a dog. So we got this dog, and for the first little while, I think I was happy with it. But it wasn't long before I started to feel that I was being very hypocritical, because by this time I was a vegan, or at least I thought I was a vegan. And the breeder that sold us the dog told us that we should feed the dog a raw diet. So I remember being in the grocery store and reading labels on groceries, to make sure there were no animal products in them. And then I would go and purchase chicken backs, chicken feet, chicken livers. We had a friend living nearby that would slaughter pigs and bring us dead pig meat. And we'd feed this to the dog. And I remember the dog getting diarrhea all over the house. But I remember feeling this is not right. I'm supposed to be avoiding animal products because I don't want to support the meat industry. And here I am purchasing meat for my dog. It makes no sense to fund the torture and death of countless animals in order to feed one. And also, we had this outdoor cat, this one right here. It didn't really like to be petted, but my kids would try to pet it, and sometimes the cat would scratch them and make them bleed. This cat just started showing up out of nowhere one day, looking through our glass doors on the deck, and I felt bad for it. So I would buy wet cat food for it in a can and feed it. And then around the same time, I was thinking, why? This doesn't make sense. This is not in line with my values. I don't believe in supporting the meat industry. So I had this huge dilemma going on. And then, I had friends that would say, oh, but, the pet food, it's made with waste products that, aren't fit for human consumption, this and that. But that's faulty logic there, because there's a market for it. Even though we aren't consuming them with our stomachs, we're consuming them by buying these things. It doesn't matter if we're eating them or not. We're still buying them. We're still demanding these products. So as long as there's a demand, there's going to be a supply. Their arguments didn't make sense to me. And I was beginning to see vegans as being very hypocritical. And I remember voicing a few of these thoughts on vegan forums and groups and things that I was a member of, and people just reacting very irrationally. And that opened my eyes to how hypocritical and irrational most vegans are. So I decided that I was not going to feed this cat anymore, and we were going to switch our dog over to a vegan diet, which, by the way, you can do with dogs. Dogs thrive on vegan diets, unlike cats that are obligate carnivores. There was a dog that was entered into the Guinness Book of World Records for living to the age of 25, and it was fed a 100% vegan diet. So we would feed our dog our table scraps, as well as this vegan kibble, which is nutritionally balanced. And the dog's health was great on this food. A lot of things were changing in our lives at this time. My husband was becoming more educated about the environmental and health implications of eating animal products. After watching all of these documentaries I'm showing you here, which, by the way, are all available on Netflix. Earthlings is on YouTube. My husband watched Earthlings, and that was the turning point for him. He used to love meat and animal products, and he never looked back after watching that documentary. He felt sick for 3 days after he watched it. Never looked back. So we gave away our fishing equipment because we used to go fishing with the kids. Here's a picture of my daughter making a fish head talk. We stopped doing that. We got rid of my reef tank. I had this aquarium, a 65-gallon tank. I grew mostly corals in it. I didn't keep a lot of fish. I had a couple of clownfish. I kept some cleaner shrimp and some other critters like a sea cucumber. I had a sea urchin, crabs, snails. But it was mostly corals that I was keeping, and it just didn't feel right anymore to keep this aquarium, so I gave that away. By this time, I thought that keeping pets was unethical, but now I'm going to talk about how my feelings for dogs really changed, because I used to think dogs were beautiful. I used to think I loved dogs. That changed drastically starting about this time. In 2012, I became pregnant with my third child. And I would like you to go watch my video called When New Mothers Start Hating Their Dogs. Just to sum it up for you, I found myself feeling extremely disgusted with the dog. Not only the dog's smell, but the sounds it would make. its behaviors, the way it would shake itself and send slobber and dander and hairs flying all over the place, the way it would lick itself, those slurping sounds, the way it would watch me constantly, the way it was so needy and begging for attention constantly. Everything about this dog was driving me crazy all of a sudden. And this is not uncommon. This happens to many, many pregnant women. I don't know why it doesn't happen to all pregnant women. I think it is nature's way of telling women to get the remorseless, fanged, bloodthirsty predator out of the house to protect the baby that's on the way. Because suddenly it's like I saw the dog for what it is. It's as if a blindfold was removed and I could see how gross, how disgusting, and how unpredictable dogs are. This dog never bit my children, but once it was playing with my middle child, the dog jumped up and scratched my son's lip open. He still has a scar there. That scar's going to be there for the rest of his life. The dog once growled at my children. I realize now that even though this dog this breed rather, is supposed to be great with children, it's still a dog. It's still a predator. And it's not capable of feeling the emotions of love or guilt or remorse or anything. It could have easily bitten my child and then felt nothing about it. Why do I want something like this in my house? It's completely irrational. If you love your children, you wouldn't want a dog in the house. This just suddenly made sense to me, not to mention all of the diseases that dogs transmit to us. There are so many reasons to get rid of a dog, to not have a dog in the house in the first place, but especially if you have a child, a baby coming. So I was overcome with this urgent need to get this animal out of my house. And my husband, thankfully, was on board. He was very supportive, and he helped us to find a home for the dog through work. He found a family that really wanted it. So we gave the dog away. I was so relieved when the dog was gone. It was like a huge weight off of my shoulders. And I got busy cleaning and disinfecting the house. And even months after that dog was gone, every time I would turn on the vacuum, that smell of dog would permeate the room. And this is after I cleaned the vacuum cleaner. I'm telling you, the dog smell lingered in the vacuum cleaner. We had to get rid of that vacuum cleaner. Dogs are just so disgusting. Even after we would bathe that dog, we used to bring it to the groomer regularly. And immediately after a bath, it would still smell like dog. Dog mixed with, shampoo or perfumey smell. It was so disgusting. Anyways, what really opened my eyes to the insanity of the dog worship, religion, cult, whatever you want to call it. Well, it was a few things, and I'm going to talk to you about them briefly here. I was a member of a Facebook group for our rural community here. And I was noticing a lot of people were posting about the roaming dogs that were killing people's chickens, harassing joggers, attacking people at the community mailbox. People were just going on and on about how they didn't feel safe with all these roaming dogs around. And by this point, I also did not feel safe. And I shared about how I always carry bear spray with me, as well as a machete when I go hiking or walking around in our community. Now, I just figured I was helping people, giving them a suggestion. Arm yourself so that you will feel less afraid. You will feel safer armed, right? Be prepared to protect yourself and your loved ones. I mean, isn't that common sense? What rational person wouldn't want to do that? Well, the reaction I got was not what I expected at all. People ganged up on me. They lost their minds. They were freaking out, talking to me like I was some sort of psycho. And, making accusations like I was into animal cruelty and stuff like this. And I was just blown away by the irrationality in that Facebook group. And I had moose hunters. I looked at their profiles, right? These were people that were out there killing moose, writing, I am a voice for the voiceless, and I have to speak up for dogs. And I was like, really? And I replied, if you're a voice for the voiceless, what do you think those moose are trying to tell you? And people just freaked out. I was prepared to find a mob of angry residents carrying pitchforks and torches. I thought they were going to come burn down my house. They were so upset with me. And why? Just because I was prepared to protect my children and myself against a dog attack? I thought that was crazy. We went for a hike in this park, and I had just had my son and he was hungry, so I stopped to breastfeed him. When out of the blue, a dog showed up, a large dog, and was sniffing my breast and sniffing my son's head. Well, this startled me and upset me, and I confronted the owner. And instead of receiving an apology, which I thought would be the rational thing for this person to do, she freaked out and became angry at me, as if I had done something wrong. Oh, dogs are allowed off leash here. What's your problem? Blah, blah, blah. And I found her reaction to be very irrational again, because I tried to put myself in her shoes. I was like, if it had been me walking my dog here, if my dog had run up to some woman who was breastfeeding to sniff her breast, I would have felt embarrassed and ashamed, and I would have apologized. I would have understood how intrusive and unwelcome and unacceptable that is. But nope, that's not what this woman was expressing at all. And I thought that was very odd, curious. I was dumbfounded by her reaction. I'm just going to list some more things that were eye-opening moments. I remember walking with my children down a street near the park. We were going to the park so they could go play on the swings, and there was a man with a large off-leash German Shepherd walking towards us as he was crossing the street. We were crossing in opposite directions, passing each other, and it was making me really uncomfortable. And this, in our town, we have leash laws. You need to leash your dog. And I was starting to notice more and more that people were not obeying leash laws, nor were they obeying poop laws. They were not picking up their dog's crap. And I confronted this guy. I asked him, could you please leash your dog? And he scoffed at me and he said, no, and continued walking. And I thought, wow, that's very asocial. That's not the way you respond to a that's just what? I would never have said that to someone. If someone had asked me to leash my dog, I would have known, wow, they're uncomfortable with my off-leash dog. I would have, first of all, never have had my dog off-leash in town. Anyway, I remember once going into the tax office, and there was a dog that ran up to me from the back of the office. And from my body language, I guess the women working there could tell that I wasn't comfortable with this. And one woman asked me, oh, are you afraid of dogs? And I said, no, I'm not afraid of dogs. I just think they're disgusting because they lick their anuses and then they try to lick you. And she looked at me. It's like her face froze. She was shocked. She didn't know what to say. And after a few moments, she said for the entire office to hear, she said loudly, we have a dog hater over here, calling attention to me. And I thought, wow, why did you have to do that? And I really started to have the feeling that there's something not right with these people. How can they assume that everyone is just comfortable with dogs? A lot of people are not comfortable with dogs, but they just think it's fine to let their dog run up to anybody. This is not right. We had a neighbor with large shepherd mixes, German shepherd mixes that would come in our yard. They would come up onto our deck. They were chewing up my kids' toys. We had some wooden shoes from Holland that were a gift from my children's grandparents. These dogs chewed them up, destroyed them. They were destroying our kids' toys. They were digging in my garden and just jumping up on my kids as well. I remember one of them scratched my kids, and this was really starting to piss me off. So I spoke with the owner, who did nothing about it. In fact, he acted annoyed with me for complaining about his dogs. That was an eye-opening moment. Thank goodness he moved away. Now, I had a friend who had a pit bull. She got a pit bull puppy, and she invited us over to visit. Now, I don't think my baby was born at this time. No, I only had my 2 older kids, but they were still young, and I went over. She was desperate to have my children meet her puppy for some reason, and I, at the time, was not really aware of pit bulls. I knew there was some controversy surrounding them, but my friend, who was someone I respected, this was a professional, she worked in healthcare, I thought she knew what she was talking about, so she was telling me about how these dogs are misunderstood and they're great dogs. And we went over, and the dog was, very affectionate. It wasn't aggressive at all. It played with my kids. There were no issues. But I decided to look into it more because, like I told you, I love learning, and I wanted to learn what is the truth about these dogs because I knew there was controversy surrounding them. I wanted to get to the bottom of this, so I began to do my own research. And this is when I really started to realize the truth about dogs and their owners, because I found websites such as the National Pitbull Victim Awareness website, dogsbite.org, Daxton's Friends. I joined groups on Facebook that were discussing the pit bull problem. And I began to realize the delusions, the myths, the lies, the deceit, and just the craziness inherent in this dog cult. Now, is it a cult? That's going to be the subject of my next video. I used to think it was a cult. I'm having second thoughts now. But there's something really weird going on with these people, and I realized that, and I realized this is a mental disorder that is not yet recognized. And I made a video about how some people have an easier time questioning things than other people do, and challenging authority and established beliefs. And I have always been a person who questioned things. At a young age, I questioned my family's religion. I got into debates with our family priest who used to come to our house and bless our food in the Ukrainian Catholic tradition. This was something that they would do. They come to the house, sing songs and drink alcohol. And there was a lot about my family's religion that, I had questions about. It didn't make sense to me. I questioned our religion, and I ultimately rejected it. My Ukrainian grandmother was a staunch anti-Semite. Now, when I left home and moved to the city, I met some really cool Jewish people. In fact, there was a Jewish woman named Heidi who was instrumental in saving my life in AA. Heidi, if you're listening to this by any chance, thank you, and I love you for what you did for me. I worked with the funniest Jewish man. I had great Jewish friends, so I realized my grandmother was wrong to hate Jewish people. And if she was wrong about her anti-Semitism, maybe she was wrong about other things, and she was. My mother didn't like Black people, and my father didn't like First Nations people. Well, I met some wonderful Black people in my life, and I've met some wonderful First Nations people in my life. Not only that, but I've been working on my family tree on the ancestry.ca website, and I'm realizing that I have First Nations ancestors. Not one or two, but a few of them. I am part First Nations. And these ancestors were on my dad's side. So he was hating himself. It's ridiculous. So I realized if they were wrong about those things, they could be wrong about other things, and they were. I questioned many traditions that my parents taught me. Hunting, fishing, diet. Both of my parents were hardcore meat eaters who believed you could not be healthy without eating meat. And I was able to question that and come to my own conclusion and reject what they taught me. Alcohol was a big one for me because I am a recovering alcoholic. Alcohol nearly killed me. It destroyed my family, and it killed some of my relatives. Yet I was seeing advertisements that were showing people that were happy and having a great time. And, while drinking alcohol, they were not showing the truth about alcohol. They were showing, something that they wanted the public to see, something that would sell their product. They were not showing the reality of alcohol. They were glorifying alcohol. I was beginning to realize that our society glorifies the very things that are killing us. Not just alcohol, but food, fast food, meat, dairy, eggs. And I was realizing that these ads were not telling the truth. These companies were lying to us just to get our money. Now, if they were doing this with, food and alcohol, maybe they were doing it with dogs as well. It wasn't a stretch for me to imagine that I was being lied to about dogs by my parents, by my culture, by all of the advertising I was seeing, and by the media, in movies and books. So I think that ability I have to think independently and reject my family's, traditions and beliefs, that played a big role in me being able to question what I was being told about dogs as well. I rejected my culture's way of raising children. When it comes to birth, when it comes to how to educate children. I could talk a lot about that. I did discuss that in my video about childism. Please check that video out as well. Now, why is it easier for me than it is for other people to abandon tradition and to admit that I was irrational and that my beliefs were wrong? I grew up in 3 different cultures at the same time, and I never identified strongly with any of them. Maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe if I had been born, 100% Italian or something, I would have identified strongly with, the Italian culture. But like I said, I'm a mix of all these different things, and I never identified strongly with any. So I kind of made my own identity. I kind of picked up things from here and there that I liked to define myself, and I didn't depend on others to define me. That helped. I've never been a person who was afraid of social rejection. I'd already experienced social rejection when it came to religion and diet, as well as alcohol. It's not easy to make friends in my culture because most people drink, most people hunt, most people fish. They bond over these activities. So I was used to being a loner by this point. And I had a close friend who hated dogs. And I think that is key. I'm not sure if I would have been able to accept the idea that dogs are horrible if I did not have at least one person in my life who believed that. I needed to have Marco to open my mind to, a different perspective about children and pets. And I needed to have, I'm not going to say her name. I'm going to keep her anonymous because she's still in my life. Marco and I lost touch years and years ago, but I needed to have my best friend in my life to open my mind to a different perspective about dogs, I think. Like I was talking to you about the dog crapping on the sidewalk. Oh, another thing I forgot to tell you was once I was walking down our street with my dog, my labradoodle. This was shortly before we got rid of it. And it was off leash, and it was taking a dump in the ditch. Now, the neighbor who lived in the house, behind the ditch, came out of her house, and she yelled at me, and she yelled, "Are you going to pick that up?" Now, I wasn't carrying any plastic bags with me because I told you I was never going to stoop that low. I was never going to pick up dog crap. That was way beneath me. I was never going to do that. I had no bags. I had no means to pick it up. And I know that other dog owners would have probably gotten angry and yelled back, but this isn't your property. Come up with some, because that's what they usually do. They react with hostility when you call them out on their irresponsible, disgusting behavior. But I didn't do that. And that's why I always say there are degrees of dog worship. I don't think I was ever a real dog worshiper. I never put dogs on the same level as my kids. I never was that far gone. And I was able to realize that I was in the wrong. And I turned around. I felt so embarrassed. I didn't say anything to her. And I walked home. And I never walked in front of her house again. And I started to feel really bad about letting my dog shit in the ditch. Even though she didn't own the ditch, I knew that when she would walk out of her driveway, she would see that pile of crap there, possibly smell it. Like, that's horrible. I didn't want to inflict that anymore on my neighbors. But see, I needed that to happen because prior to that moment, I didn't realize that what I was doing was wrong. So I needed someone to confront me. And that got me thinking, and that set me on this path. There were other things as well. I've talked for way too long in this video. Once I was at the beach with my daughter, and I think we still had our dog at this point, but I didn't bring my dog to the beach because I never even thought about bringing my dog to the beach because I knew that dogs are not allowed at that beach that we go to. There are signs there, but I was seeing dogs there. And I remember confronting the park ranger who, was in charge of that beach, and because it's in a provincial park, and the guy told me that these dog nuts were actually removing the signs, taking them down. Can you believe that? So anyway, I remember being at the beach one day. There was this dog that came out of nowhere, a large dog. And this is a beach where dogs are not supposed to be. Dogs are not allowed on this beach. This large dog came up to my daughter, snatched the sandwich out of her hand, and ate it while she cried. And the owner, sort of moseyed on over half-heartedly, was not concerned, didn't apologize. And that's just one. There were many other examples, but I think I've listed enough. More and more my eyes opened to this problem. And now they're just wide open and there's no going back. I would love to hear your experience. How did you come to hate dogs? Did you always hate dogs? What do you think about owning pets? Where are you on this journey? Please leave a comment below. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in my next video about cults. I also have a video planned about rescues. Man, that bugs me when people talk about rescue dogs. We're going to be talking about that soon. So stay tuned, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon. The future is dog-free. The future is pet-free.